PR Connections Radio presents.
Hello, Golden Knights fans, and welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and this is going to be a fantastic episode here on Vegas Hockey Hub. And for anybody who is new to the network, welcome in. We do have a show called Vegas Hockey Hub where we talk about the world of hockey Monday through Friday here on PRConnectionsRadio.com. If you want to go to the website, PRConnectionsRadio.com, check out all the content we have on there. We have a dozen shows on the network. So if you want to help support PR Connections Radio, definitely go to the website. If you are on the YouTube channel, welcome in. If you want to subscribe to the channel, that would be amazing. And if you want to like this video and share it to all your friends around the world, that would be appreciated. And if you want to follow this show on social media, it is on all social media platforms at Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you want to follow the host, at Ian Rachiele 18. So on tonight's episode, I know that since we're here in Vegas, we're on the West Coast. We talked about the Western Conference a lot on this channel. And when it comes to Vegas Hockey Hub, Vegas, San Jose, Seattle, LA, Anaheim, we mainly focus on the western side of the NHL. But for tonight, we are going to be a tad different as we are going to be focusing and we're going to be doing an analysis and an outlook on the Eastern Conference of the NHL. So we're going to kick this off by, in no particular order, we're actually going to do this in alphabetical order, and that is going to be the Boston Bruins. And I will say when it comes to Boston Bruins, last year, President's Trophy winner, this is a team that definitely last year had some good situations happen in the Eastern Conference. But the Boston Bruins did a shakeup this year. I will say when it comes to the Boston Bruins, when it comes to the organization itself, this is a team that has a lot of turnover from the year before. This is a Boston Bruins organization who I say will make a huge difference from last year to now. I don't expect them to win 65 games like they did last year. I don't expect them to be as dominant as they were last year. But what I see the Boston Bruins doing is a tamer version of last year. As you can see right down below, I have the Boston Bruins finishing second in the Atlantic Division. If you had watched our NHL season preview we did recently, I'll leave a card right up here. You will know that I had the Boston Bruins making the playoffs and getting eliminated in the second round of the Eastern Conference, losing to Toronto for the first time in forever. And what I like about Boston is they have a MVP candidate. They have someone who is one of the best hockey players in the world in David Pastrnak. I will say when it comes to Pasta, he is someone who's a generational talent, a superstar in the NHL. So for the Boston Bruins to have a talent like that is incredible. I also will mention when it comes to the Boston Bruins, they have a new captain on the organization. Brad Marchand is now a member of the Boston Bruins captaincy. Obviously, everyone knows that Patrice Bergeron is retired. He's no longer there. David Krejci, he's retired. He's no longer there. And even a few seasons ago, Tuukka Rask, the longtime goaltender, has retired. So when it comes to the Boston Bruins, this is a team with a good amount of turnover the last two seasons. Even on the defensive end, losing guys like Connor Clifton, for example, that was a big deal. Dmitry Orlov and Tyler Bertuzzi, two guys they got at the NHL trade deadline last year, are gone. They went to Carolina and Toronto, respectfully. So for the Boston Bruins, they did a lot of moves this offseason, unloading the contracts to Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno and sending them to Chicago. That would be impactful. And if we're really going to be talking about the Boston Bruins, even their depth chart and their starting lineup is going to be impactful for this upcoming year. There's a lot of question marks about this team, but there's also some good outline, some good positivity that you could talk about on this team. For example, when it comes to the Boston Bruins organization, bringing over JVR, bringing over James Van Riemsdyk, he is someone who is definitely going to add some stability to that top six. They did that trade a while ago for Pavel Zacha. That was a good, reasonable move to have on the top six. And you also had some moves like bringing over Morgan Geekie from Seattle, bringing back longtime Boston Bruin Milan Lucic after his tenure in Calgary and Edmonton. And lastly, when it comes to the defense, they brought back Hampus Lindholm, who they traded from Anaheim a few years ago. And they also had Kevin Shattenkirk, the longtime veteran, to be on their bottom pairing in Boston. So as long as you have that goaltender tandem, the best goalie tandem in the NHL, in Ullmark and in Swayman, I think the Boston Bruins are definitely going to pan out. They're going to do very well in the Atlantic Division. So that's why I have the Boston Bruins being second in the Atlantic, because this is a team that still has enough parts to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be as dominant as last year, as I said before. But what Boston will do and what Boston will become is an organization that is going to be top heavy. They replace some guys, move some pieces around, but they're still good enough to make the playoffs. So I have the Boston Bruins second in the Atlantic as we are talking about the Eastern Conference here on Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. The next team, as we're staying in alphabetical order from A to Z, the Buffalo Sabres. I have fourth in the Atlantic, and for the first time since 2011, I have the Buffalo Sabres making it to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, they're going to be a wild card team. I had them as the seventh best team in the Eastern Conference, don't get me wrong. But there's so much upside on the Buffalo Sabres that it feels like it's finally the year. It's finally time for the Buffalo Sabres to break out and have a playoff year. For example, they have so much young talent on that roster that has now made it into the NHL. We're talking about guys who are under 25 years old. Of course, you have your star in Tage Thompson. You have JJ Pareka. You have Dylan Cousins. You also have Zach Benson, who they drafted in the first round this year. Somebody who will probably have some playing time in Buffalo for 2023. Peyton Krebs, who they got in the Jack Eichel trade with the Vegas Golden Knights, him being on the bottom six, that's going to be impactful. And even if talking about the veterans the Buffalo Sabres have, Jeff Skinner, he has been there forever. He's coming off an 80-point season last year. You also have Alex Tuck, the guy who has been in Vegas, Minnesota, now in Buffalo, has kind of become a solid number two alongside Tage Thompson in Buffalo. Even some good veteran pieces on the bottom six, Casey Middlestat, Jordan Greenway, even Kyle Oposo. There is some potential on the bottom six, just like there's some young guys on the top six. And I didn't even get into mention the defense that the Buffalo Sabres do have. Not only did they bring in Eric Johnson and Connor Clifton this offseason, but they extended Rasmus Dahlin. They extended Owen Power, made sure both of their guys are going to be signed past the 2031 NHL season. That's a good move for them. This past offseason, they also extended Mateus Samuelsson, who's going to be there since 2030. So for the Buffalo Sabres, they are very smart doing what they just did. They locked up their three young defensemen, Samuelsson, Dahlin, and Power, for 7 or more years in Buffalo. That is a very incredible move by Kevin Adams. I will say the Buffalo Sabres have done pretty impressive at getting that core and getting the roster built up. And you even have two young and up-and-coming goaltenders, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Devin Levi as your Buffalo Sabres. So for right now, I say that this will be year one of the Buffalo Sabres competing in the playoffs. So I have fourth in the Atlantic, the Buffalo Sabres, as the seventh best team in the NHL Eastern Conference. And it's going to definitely be fun to see how they perform in the Atlantic. And if they can make the playoffs for the first time in 12 years out there in Buffalo. As we are talking about the Eastern Conference here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And as we are going in alphabetical order, the next team we are going to be talking about is an organization that I have making it to the Stanley Cup Finals out of the Eastern Conference. And I am talking about the team that is definitely out of rally, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes, an organization who over time has steadily gotten better and better and better as an organization. I mean, Carolina Hurricanes the last couple of years have had like stepping blocks. You know, they've been going and building blocks every single year, getting better. And this offseason, there were some questionable moves, but one decision you can definitely give praise to is getting Michael Bunting from the Tampa Bay Lightning's biggest rival in the Toronto Maple Leafs. I will say with Michael Bunting, he had one heck of a career, getting drafted by Arizona, kind of flaming out there, then going to Toronto, having one heck of a career resurgence, and now being signed by Carolina. Of course, he is going to help out on the top six alongside Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho. There is some great talent on the top six. Of course, bringing over Jesperi Kotkaniemi from the Montreal Canadiens, Martin Necas. There is also some good talent there as well. What I can appreciate about Carolina is that their core is all under the age of 26. Jack Drury, going to be on the bottom six, the guy they drafted back in 2018. He is now finally developed and made it to the Carolina Hurricanes. You also have some good guys on the defensive side. Yes, they're a bit older. They're in their late 20s, but you still have some good guys on the bottom six out there in Carolina and as their defensive pairing. Then bringing over Dmitry Orlov from the Boston Bruins. Then bringing back Tony DeAngelo. That is interesting. You also have Jacob Slavin, who is their face of the defense out there in Carolina. And the old man beard himself, Brent Burns, on that top line. I guess really an only question mark you can have about this team is the goaltending. Because, yes, you have two veterans in Antti Raanta and Freddie Anderson. But as long as Freddie and Antti Raanta do what they're supposed to do, and that is get the job done and get them enough wins to get into the playoffs, this team could take it from there. So I will say for the Carolina Hurricanes, they will be first in the Metro. And this is going to be an organization that's going to be fun to watch as an organization. There's going to be a lot you can talk about when it comes to Carolina. And they are my pick to win, not just the Metro, but they're going to be my team to make it out of the Eastern Conference and represent the East in the Stanley Cup Finals. So, as we are talking about the Eastern Conference here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and we were just finished talking about the Carolina Hurricanes, who are not just going to finish first in the Metro, but are going to make it out of the Eastern Conference. They are my pick to win the Eastern Conference Finals. Staying in alphabetical order here on Vegas Hockey Hub as we're doing the Eastern Conference. Next, we are going to get into the Columbus Blue Jackets. And man, there is so much I can talk about with this team because what a interesting situation the Columbus Blue Jackets have found themselves in. This is a Columbus Blue Jackets team that hired Mike Babcock this offseason and then due to unfortunate events had to fire Mike Babcock almost 2.5 weeks before the regular season kicked off. So they had to hire Pascal Vincent, who was an assistant in Winnipeg and then moved over to be an assistant in Columbus. They promoted him to be the head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, let me give you two positives about Columbus versus one glaring negative the Columbus Blue Jackets have. So for starters, the Columbus Blue Jackets, you do have some good up-and-coming talent that you are going to use to your advantage. They have not one, not two, not three, but 4 former first-round picks that are in the top 6 in Columbus. You obviously do have some good talent along there as well. You have your top line of Patty Laine and Johnny Hockey. But the Columbus Blue Jackets' glaring flaw is the lack of depth on this team. They have a bottom 6 that unfortunately in Columbus is alarming. You have these young guys, these young 19, 20-year-olds, but they're not going to mesh yet. So you had to have some veteran guys. The problem is their veterans on the bottom six are underwhelming. On defense, you have Zachary Werenski, who is good, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to the Columbus Blue Jackets, you brought in Ivan Provorov. You hope he can be a solid number 2 defenseman. You added Damian Severson. You traded for him from the New Jersey Devils. You hope he can pan out. And then they brought in Eric Branson, who has been a huge question mark everywhere he has gone, and Jake Bean, who came over from Carolina. It's questionable to see what he can do in Columbus. So I will mention Columbus real quick because you do have young talent, and that second overall pick is definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. There's going to be so much talent that's going to be coming out of the third overall pick from this year, and then that former second overall pick from a couple of years ago. But yes, Columbus Blue Jackets, 7th in the Metro. I just look at them and say, you know what? You're an organization that has some developing talent, but it's not there yet. So you are going to be towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference. So that's going to be Columbus. And as we are doing the Eastern Conference and discussing them in alphabetical order from A to Z, we are actually going to move on now to an organization that I have as the last wildcard team in the Eastern Conference, and that is the Detroit Red Wings. That's Hockey Town, baby. The Detroit Red Wings, they are an organization who finally have gotten some pieces together, and I like what as Bill Clinton would say, Steve Yzerman. This is somebody who, as a general manager, coming over from Tampa Bay, building that roster up. It's taken a while, but he has finally built a roster in Detroit. I like the top 9. Having Alex DeBrincat being brought over from Ottawa is an amazing move. You're going to be teaming him up with Dylan Larkin. David Perron, the veteran they brought over from St. Louis. He is solid and consistent, at least a 20-goal scorer. Lucas Raymond, the young up-and-coming guy, former top 5 pick. He is going to be a 20-goal scorer this year. I won't be surprised. And then having JT Kumper, who they brought over from Colorado, a former Stanley Cup champion, that is going to help out. I also can appreciate that they have added some good veterans to the organization. Having Christian Fischer, having Daniel Sprong, Andrew Cupp, there is some good veterans you have on the bottom 6, and you also added some good defensemen in Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie over from the Montreal days. So for the Detroit Red Wings, I like what they have. We're going to have to see if the goaltending can mesh well. You have James Reimer, Billy Husso. There is some question marks there, but as long as the defense holds up, as long as Moritz Seider continues to develop as a defenseman, I like what Detroit has to offer. I have them as 5th and the final wild card team in the Eastern Conference, and I'm a huge fan of what Steve Yzerman has done as the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. And the coach, by the way, him coming over, I think he is excellent as well. Of course, Derek Lalonde would definitely be someone that Steve Yzerman would know very well. After all, he was an assistant coach in Tampa Bay and came over to him from Detroit with Steve Yzerman. As we are continuing our Eastern Conference conversation, let's get to the Florida Panthers because I have them as the 7th best team in the Atlantic. And I will mention when it comes to the Florida Panthers, I am not high on them as much as everybody else is. I know some people do. Some people like them. I really don't. This is an organization in Florida that definitely leaves a lot to be desired. Their goaltending overachieved in the playoffs last year. Their forwards overachieved in the playoffs last year. And their defense overachieved in the playoffs last year. This was an organization who got hot at the right time, and I don't see it happening again. I mean, this is an organization who you have Matthew Tkachuk, who unfortunately, we're going to have to see what he can do with a guy like Nick Cousins, Alexander Barkov, Carter Varhey. There is some good talent on the top 6, but that bottom 6, oh my gosh, there's a lot left to be desired on the bottom 6 in Florida. Outside of Sam Reinhart, who's a middle 6 forward, there isn't a lot I can say about the middle 6, and more importantly, the bottom 6. that are positives. When it comes to defense, they brought over Oliver Ekman-Larsson after he got bought out by Vancouver. They also brought in Dmitry Kolikov, and they also have some good defensemen in Gustav Forsling, who they brought over on waivers. What I don't understand about Florida is you have Anthony Stolarz, you have Spencer Knight, you have Sergei Bobrovsky. There is too many goaltenders in that room for the Florida Panthers. And I unfortunately look at them and say, where is the production going to be? How are they going to duplicate what they did in the playoffs last year? I don't see it. So for Florida, I have them missing the playoffs. I do not see them replicating at all what they achieved in the playoffs last year. And as we're continuing about bad teams, let's move over to Montreal for just a second. Because, man, the Montreal Canadiens really are in a dysfunctional situation. Ever since making the Stanley Cup Finals and getting blown out by Tampa Bay in the 2021 Stanley Cup Finals, this is an organization that has just really not done anything of note in Montreal. I mean, you have Nick Suzuki, you have Cole Caulfield, you have the former number 1 overall pick as your middle 6 forward, but this organization is trying to take over. This is a Montreal Canadiens team that's trying to rely on former prospects from other organizations to get the job done. Alex Newhook, they acquired from Colorado. Hopefully, he could become something. Kirby Dach, who they acquired from Chicago. He did solid last year. Let's see what he'll do in year number 2 in Montreal. You also have a situation where defensively, it's a lot of young guys. Jordan Harris, you have Caden Gould. I mean, this is a organization that I kind of question how they're going to do this upcoming year. You also have Chris Weidman, Carey Price being on IR to begin the year. There is not a lot of positives in Montreal, hence why I have them as the last seed in the Atlantic. This is going to be the worst team in this division, and I don't see a lot of positives in Montreal. As we are discussing the Eastern Conference here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I am your host, Ian Rachiele. Staying in alphabetical order, let's get to the Metro, and let's talk about the New Jersey Devils. I mean, this is a New Jersey Devils team that has so much promise and so much young talent, and I will give credit where credit is due. Lindy Ruff has taken this team to the next level last year. Lindy Ruff did a solid job of elevating the young talent while having veterans on the roster. I will also appreciate what they did this offseason. Calling up Calgary, trading for a veteran in Tyler Toffoli, nice decision. Trading at the trade deadline, getting Timo Meier, and then extending him to an $8 million deal per year, that is solid. I will also appreciate Dawson Mercer, Alexander Holtz, Nico Heuscher, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, so much young talent that is locked up long-term in New Jersey. I mean, Jack Hughes and Timo Meier, and also having Alexander Holtz, so much good talent on that line. We'll see how they do next year. But what I will really ask about the New Jersey Devils, can your defense do better than what they did last year? Because you have Dougie Hamilton, you have Brendan Smith, you have Luke Hughes, but can they get to the next level? Can Dougie Hamilton become a Norris Trophy nominee? Can Luke Hughes become a Calder Trophy nominee? That's what you're going to have to expect from the New Jersey Devils. And the goaltending situation, can you get a lot more from Vanacek? Can you get more from Schmid? This is an organization that I really question, can they fulfill the most out of this organization? I mentioned before, and I mentioned on the preview show, the New Jersey Devils are third in the Metro to me. Pittsburgh's going to be better. Carolina's going to be better. I think New Jersey will probably be either a first-round exit or at best will be a second-round exit once again in the Eastern Conference. I like the talent. I like the coaching. I just think there's better teams in the East. and I don't see them going far in the playoffs. Apologies to New Jersey. As we are staying in the Metro, how about we go to a team right below them in the standings and one of the first teams not making it to the playoffs, and that is the New York Islanders. I mean, this is an organization that Lou Lamoriello has done pretty well in, but this is a roster I really don't have a lot of expectations for. Ilya Sorokin is going to have to carry this team on his back once again. And speaking of goaltenders who are going to have to carry on their back, the New York Rangers are the same way. They have gotten a lot of talent that has been turned over. You have some young guys, you have some older guys, but unfortunately, what I see with the New York Rangers is just a bunch of mid. I mean, this is kind of just a meh roster. You have some good talent on the top, but the bottom is just very underwhelming. Defensively, you have 2 solid defensemen. The other 4, we have to wait and see how they develop. And your goaltending, Shesterkin, is going to have to play on his head once again. And the last team that I'm going to kind of talk about on the Atlantic side of it is the Ottawa Senators. That's an organization that I kind of scratch my head wondering what they're going to do this upcoming year. Because the Ottawa Senators have new ownership now, but can they really elevate themselves and step up to the next level? Can you see the Ottawa Senators doing anything more than just being a 6th best team in the Atlantic? Can the Ottawa Senators do anything more than just being great against bad teams, but underwhelming against great teams? Because that's what Ottawa's roster really looks like. I mean, when you really examine what the Ottawa Senators have in terms of organization, yes, you have Brady Tkachuk, you have Claude Giroux, you have Tim Stützle, yes, you have Matthew Joseph and Drake Bradfordson, but do you have enough talent on that bottom 6 to get the job done? I don't know. And Thomas Chabot and Jake Sanderson are 2 of your best young guys on defense. But Travis Hamonic, I question he'll be there full term. Eric Brandstrom has kind of been underwhelming since being brought over from Vegas. And when it comes to the goaltending for the Ottawa Senators, Anton Forsberg, Giannis Korpisalo, I do wonder what that situation will be like long term. So for Ottawa, there isn't much I could talk about there. And I will mention very quickly, there is one more team we have to get to because, man, oh man, are they going to be terrible this year. And there really isn't much positive I could talk about. And that is the Bullies themselves, and that is the Philadelphia Flyers. Look, for Philadelphia Flyers fans, there's no nice way for me to put this. You are going to suck this upcoming year. This is a Philadelphia Flyers team that has been selling off assets every single year. You just got rid of Ivan Provorov. He is gone. You also got rid of guys like Kevin Hayes. He is gone. Claude Giroux. He is gone. There is so much talent no longer in Philadelphia. Carter Hart has not developed into the guy a lot of Philadelphia people thought he was going to be. Sean Courtier, he has not done what a lot of people expected him to be. And Owen Tippett is really one of your only prospects there that seem anything of note in Philadelphia. Cam York, we'll see if he develops at all. And you also have a good up-and-coming guy in Bobby Brink. We'll see if he develops at all as well. So for the Philadelphia Flyers, there really isn't anything positive to say, despite the fact that for Philadelphia, it's not going to be a great season for you. You're entering a rebuild. You're tearing the roster down. But it's going to be okay. Until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. Continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go, Knights, go.
PR Connections Radio presents